Have you ever met someone who changed the rhythm of your world without even trying? Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. It slips quietly into your life through laughter, gentle words, and moments that feel almost ordinary. Yet behind those ordinary moments lies something extraordinary, a connection that refuses to be ignored. This is the story of a young man who thought love was far from his reach, until a familiar bond transformed into something deeper. It's a journey of hidden feelings, impossible choices, and the courage to embrace love where the heart insists it belongs. The boy was 22, yet the weight of solitude seemed older than his years. Surrounded by family gatherings, cheerful chatter, and the rhythm of a household that never really slept, he still carried silence within him like a second skin. His mother often caught his distant gaze, a mixture of longing and hesitation, as though he was searching for something he could not name. She wanted to see her son's heart awakened, to feel him live rather than simply move through days. She believed love could change the shadows in his eyes, and quietly resolved to create space for it to bloom. Her stepsister had been away from the family for some time, but she trusted her warmth to bring light back into the boy's world. When she invited her to spend more time with them, he greeted her with the familiar title of sister, a word that had never meant blood, only comfort. She carried herself with a calm strength, the kind that made even ordinary moments feel less heavy. Her laughter filled the room like sunlight across cold walls, and he felt a quiet ease in her presence he hadn't known in years. At first, the affection was simple: shared meals where they lingered at the table after others had left, small conversations about books, music, and the quiet beauty of everyday things. Yet beneath the ease was something stirring that he couldn't ignore. He found himself watching the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her voice softened when she spoke about dreams, the way her eyes lit up when she noticed something beautiful no one else had. It wasn't loud or sudden, but a steady warmth spreading inside him, unsettling and comforting all at once. She, too, seemed drawn to him in ways she didn't explain. While she carried herself with composure, she often sought his company, asking for his help with small tasks, inviting him to sit with her, starting conversations that stretched long past their natural end. There was no clear line where family affection ended and something deeper began. It simply felt natural, as if their lives had been waiting to overlap in this quiet, undeniable way. His mother observed with gentle satisfaction. She saw her son's shoulders lighten, his laughter returning in fragments, his eyes catching glimmers of joy she hadn't seen since his childhood. To her, love was not always bound by definitions or labels. It was a gift when two hearts recognized each other, no matter the path it took to arrive. The boy didn't yet name what he felt. He only knew that her presence changed the color of his days. The loneliness that had once pressed against him began to ease, replaced with anticipation for the simplest of things: a shared smile, a conversation by the window, a silence that felt full instead of empty. In calling her sister, he had meant closeness, but his heart whispered something different now, something tend to see the days unfolded gently, each one carrying threads that wove them closer together. What had begun as simple companionship grew into something layered, a quiet gravity pulling them toward one another. Their conversations stretched far beyond surface talk, dipping into hidden fears and unspoken hopes. She became the person he could confide in when the silence of his own thoughts felt too heavy. She listened without judgment, her presence offering him the freedom to be vulnerable. He discovered that she understood the language of his pauses, the weight of words he didn't say, and the subtle currents of his heart. There were evenings when the world seemed to fade, leaving only the soft rhythm of their voices. They spoke of dreams of the lives they imagined, and of the roads not yet walked. She shared stories of moments that shaped her, and he found comfort in knowing her truths. With each word, the barrier of formality dissolved, leaving only sincerity and trust. It wasn't passion that rushed in with fire, but something steadier, like water shaping stone, persistent, undeniable, and quietly transformative. He began to notice the small ways she lingered near him, a hand resting briefly on his arm when she laughed, the way her eyes searched his when silence hung too long, the warmth in her voice when she called his name. These gestures were gentle, but they ignited questions in him he didn't know how to answer. Could it be that she felt the same pull he did, or was he mistaking kindness for something more? His heart wrestled with these doubts, torn between the comfort of their bond and the ache of his growing desire. She, too, carried unspoken questions. The boy who once seemed so quiet now occupied her thoughts in moments she couldn't control. His honesty, his hesitation, his raw sincerity stirred feelings she had not planned for. Yet the word he used, sister, stood between them like a fragile wall, one she hesitated to touch for fear it might collapse and change everything. Still, when their eyes met in moments too long to be accidental, the truth lingered there, waiting for courage to bring it into light. Their connection deepened in silence as much as in words. When rain tapped against the windows, they sat together, watching droplets race across the glass, saying little but feeling everything. In the quiet, he felt the brush of her presence like warmth radiating into him, a reminder that closeness didn't always need words. Each day left him more entangled, his heart swelling with emotions that no longer fit inside the title he had given her. The tension grew not in conflict, but in longing, an ache that whispered of more than friendship, more than family. He caught himself imagining what it would mean to no longer hide behind the safety of names, to reach for her hand openly, to let the truth breathe. Yet fear shadowed the thought. What if speaking it broke what they already had? The risk of losing her seemed unbearable, yet the weight of silence was becoming heavier still. Inside both of them, the quiet storm gathered. It was not loud, not chaotic, but steady, two hearts circling the same truth, waiting for the moment when silence would no longer be enough. Love was not demanding their words yet, but it was shaping them, preparing them for a turning point neither could ignore much longer. The unspoken feelings between them had grown too large to remain hidden, and life soon pressed them to a point where silence could no longer protect them. A family occasion brought laughter, voices, and the energy of togetherness, yet for him it all blurred into background noise. His eyes kept finding hers, drawn again and again as if the rest of the world had dimmed around them. Each stolen glance carried more weight than words ever could, and with every passing hour the pressure inside him grew. He realized that holding back was no longer about preserving peace. It had become a slow erosion of his own truth. That evening, when the house had quieted and the laughter faded into memory, they found themselves together once more. The room carried a hush, not empty but charged with all the things they had left unsaid. He could feel his heartbeat rising, a drum inside his chest urging him to speak before the chance slipped away. For weeks he had carried questions, doubts, and the fear of losing what they shared, but beneath it all was the certainty that love, if left unspoken, would wither into regret. She looked at him with eyes that carried both curiosity and hesitation. There was a softness in her gaze, as though she, too, was waiting for something to change. Her silence was not distant but expectant, as if her heart had already answered a question he had not yet asked. That silent exchange gave him courage, enough to step into the unknown. His words trembled at first, but they carried the raw honesty of a soul tired of hiding. He admitted that what he felt went far beyond the title he had given her, that calling her sister had once been comfort, but had become a barrier against the truth. He spoke of the way her presence shifted his world, the way her laughter had colored his days, the way her understanding had awakened something inside him he never thought he would find. Every word carried the risk of rejection, yet every word was also freedom. For a moment, she said nothing. The silence stretched, heavy and fragile, and he feared he had shattered what they had built. But then her expression softened into something he had only dared imagine. She admitted she had felt the same pull, the same quiet struggle, and the same fear of naming it. The word sister had once kept them safe, but her heart had long since crossed beyond its boundaries. In her confession was relief, and in her relief was joy. The weight that had bound them dissolved, replaced by a fragile but undeniable clarity. What they shared was not confusion, but love, gentle, patient, and rooted in the depth of their bond. They had not planned it, had not sought it, but love had chosen them all the same. The risk that had loomed so large now felt small in comparison to the truth they had uncovered together. In that moment, the boy felt a release, as though he had finally stepped into the life he had been waiting for. She, too, felt a peace in surrendering to what her heart had long known. It was not the end of their uncertainty, but the beginning of something new, something they could finally walk into without fear or disguise. Love had spoken through them, and they had finally found the courage to answer. The days after their confession carried a new light, as though the world itself recognized the shift within them. What had once been heavy with hesitation was now filled with quiet certainty. They no longer spoke in half-truths or lingered in silence out of fear. Instead, every word and gesture carried openness. The boy felt the difference immediately. His laughter came freely, his steps lighter, his heart unburdened. She mirrored this change, her presence warmer, her eyes brighter, as if acknowledging aloud what had always been true had given her soul room to breathe. When his mother noticed the closeness between them, she was not surprised. She had seen the way their hearts leaned toward each other long before they admitted it themselves. Rather than judgment, she offered encouragement, a reminder that love was not bound by names, but by the sincerity of what two souls shared. Her support dissolved the final traces of guilt and fear, allowing them to embrace their bond without the shadow of doubt. Love, after all, was a gift, and she wanted her son to hold it fully. Together, they began to shape a new rhythm. It was not about grand gestures or declarations, but about the small, consistent ways they chose each other each day. Morning conversations carried the comfort of belonging, shared work became moments of joy rather than routine, and evenings stretched into peaceful hours of companionship. Where once he had felt isolated, he now felt rooted, his life interwoven with hers in a way that gave meaning to even the simplest of days. Their bond grew not from sudden passion, but from trust, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable. She admired the sincerity of his heart, the way he valued honesty above pretense. He cherished her strength, the quiet resilience in her spirit, and the warmth she carried into every space she entered. Together, they became more than two individuals finding love. They became mirrors reflecting the best in each other, drawing out qualities they might never have discovered alone. The boy, once hesitant to step beyond his silence, now found joy in dreaming aloud, speaking of futures that had once felt unreachable. She listened with the same patience that had first drawn him to her, but now with the added tenderness of someone who shared in those dreams. Their conversations no longer carried the ache of what was unsaid, but the hope of what was possible. In time, their love became something visible to everyone around them, not through bold displays, but through the quiet consistency of their care. The way their eyes sought each other across a room, the way their laughter intertwined, the way they walked side by side, as if the world was lighter for sharing it. Their story was not about dramatic confessions or perfect moments, but about the steady building of a life together, brick by brick, choice by choice. As seasons shifted, so too did their love, deepening with every challenge and every joy. What began as companionship had transformed into a partnership built on faith in one another. Their journey became proof that love often grows in unexpected places, that titles and names mean little compared to the truth of the heart. In embracing what they felt, they not only found each other, but also found themselves. For the boy, now a man shaped by love, the shadows that once followed him had lifted. For her, the loneliness she had quietly carried was replaced by belonging. Together, they stood in the light of a new beginning, hand in hand, hearts steady, knowing they had chosen not just love, but each other. And in that choice lay the promise of a future filled with hope, courage, and the simple, unshakable beauty of love that had finally been given its rightful place.